Hey everyone, Sky here to discuss Before Sunset, starring Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, directed by Richard Linklater. Now, before I get into this, 9 years after Before Sunrise, what took them so long? Well, they went through a bunch of things. Julie Delpy's not working too much, but Ethan Hawke and Richard Linklater had other things going on. So, I guess it makes sense. But I have seen this movie once in my life, and I will watch it again two more times for this viewing. And let's see how this goes. It's been 9 years since Before Sunrise, and we catch up with Jesse, returned by Ethan Hawke, at a book signing in a bookstore in Paris, France. Until Celine, returned by Julie Delpy, finds him in the bookstore, and they start to catch up as they walk around Paris and go to a cafe. And the cinematography is pretty this time, but not as pretty as in Before Sunrise, in my opinion. And I do like the bookstore that they see each other in, as it looks absolutely nice, as it is nicely shot. While they catch up, they tell each other if they stopped by Vienna 6 months after Before Sunrise ended, and they say they didn't. As Celine says her grandmother from Budapest, who was briefly brought up in Before Sunrise, passed away. And believe it or not, neither did Jesse, at first he says, as his father said he was briefly there and didn't see Celine, as he was married with the kid for the past 9 years. Something about and the dad says something about French women, as he's never met one in his life, as he wanted to talk with her, and he has to be at the airport with his agent at 7:30 p.m. France time, I'll say. And Celine brought up at one point she was living in New York while Jesse was there, which was a coincidence. And I do like being around these characters again, as their acting was pretty good. They get to the cafe for a cup of coffee and catch up even further from the past 9 years. And the cafe looks charming, as Jesse asks Celine to put her hair down in a charming kind of way. Meanwhile, they both smoke cigarettes. And the dialogue is well written, as this is well made by director Richard Linklater, as he shoots locations and writes the characters quite tremendously. They leave the cafe and they walk around Paris and having a good time with each other for the rest of the afternoon, as she doesn't remember they had sexual intercourse at a cemetery in Vienna, as they walk around a park with trees and bushes and somewhat buildings, and they chat about everything. And the runtime on this movie is perfect at 80 minutes. If it went on longer than at least 100 minutes, it would have been tedious after a while. They sit on a beach where they talk about things with like their sexual experiences. And I thought, what the fuck is that about? As well as what kind of song Celine wrote about people, as Celine takes Jesse back to the bookstore as she's in a relationship while he talks about his family. And Jesse decides to go on a boat to the next stop, and he calls his driver Philippe to meet him at the stop, where the boat drops him off while Jesse explains why he wrote his book, so he can make stops to Paris, so he can see where the fuck was she, while he explains how he met his wife and went back and forth dating, and not as because he's not happy with his wife. And the boat scene was beautiful to watch. They get off the boat and walk to the location where Philippe picks up Jesse and takes Celine home, and they get in an argument as she demands Philippe to pull over, but Jesse tells him to not to stop, as Celine is upset, but how they're happy. She remembers how they're happy when they see each other again. And I admire the dialogue Richard Linklater wrote for these two characters in the movie. They continue the drive to Celine's apartment, and Jesse is not happy being married to the woman he married, while Celine pities his life, and they drop off Celine and wish each other the best. And Jesse comes, and the driver Philippe drops off Celine, and Jesse walks up to Celine's door, and they encounter a cat that belongs to her, as the cat is precious, and he invited himself to her place. And they get there and have some tea, and he asks her to hear one song from Celine herself, as she plays the guitar, and she sings beautifully, as it sounds lovely. And hell, even Jesse loved it to the point he wants to hear another one, but she refuses and gives him his tea, and here's a CD with some music, and she describes some woman dancing as she starts to dance. Like, that is what he wants to, like, that, as he wants to stay with her, and the climax was great in my opinion. Now it's time for my rating. I'll give this movie a 8.3 out of 10. The shots were beautiful, as it was nicely shot, and the cinematography is pretty, but not as pretty as Before Sunrise. And I do like being around these characters again, as their acting was pretty good. The dialogue was well written, and it is well made by director Richard Linklater, as he shoots locations and writes the characters quite tremendously. And the runtime is perfect for 80 minutes for them to catch up until the evening. And if it were longer than 100 minutes, it would have been tedious after a while, as the climax was great in my opinion. This isn't as good as Before Sunrise, but it's still a really good film with people I was connecting with. I was enjoying myself with the movie at the end of the day. And this is a solid recommendation, as I enjoyed myself viewing this movie from start to finish. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with the Bad News Bears remake that he did. Not that original film, the one with Billy Bob Thornton. And until then, let's fall in love. Just kidding.